science enthusiasts. Welcome to Spaces Unleashed. Every week on Twitter, we bring an expert to chat live through the Spaces program. And this is bonus content that goes with the Science Podcast. We hope you enjoy the show. Hello, how's it going, Dr. Spence?
Good, how are you?
Good. Hey, I'm glad it was working. It looked like there was some kind of connection there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. This is my first time doing this.
It's all good. Okay, I'm just going to tweet out that we're starting. Just a couple ground rules and some how I run the spaces. Dr. Austin Spence is our guest tonight, and we're going to have a quick little chat with him. I'm going to do a little like 3 or 4 interview questions so you get to know what Dr. Spence is all about, and then I'll open the floor to questions. So for the first 15-20 minutes, I'm not going to let anybody up to be a speaker. So if you want to be a speaker, that's okay. You can request it right now. But I don't want anybody be frustrated that I'm not letting you come up to be a speaker. About the 15-20 minute mark, and then I'll let you come up to ask your question. I will check your, because this is an open space. Anybody from all of Twitter can drop in. I will check your profile to make sure that, you follow me or you follow Dr. Spence or your account isn't a troll account or it hasn't been created in the last couple days. So that may be why I don't let you be a speaker. And if you're shy and you don't want, it's daunting to ask a question, you can direct message me. I believe the fastest way is just to click on the Bunsen and Beaker account, and you can message me. So that's that. So without further ado, welcome, Dr. Austin Spence. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. I sitting outside enjoying the evening, and have been really excited to do this.
We've had a really good response for people wanting to come to this, so I'm hoping we'll get quite a few people in the space listening. Just for context, where are you in the world? You don't have to be super specific, but like where are you enjoying your nice evening?
Oh yeah, I'm living in it's called Brea, California, which is just in Orange County. So kind of Los Angeles area. It's like 80 degrees, sun's setting. It's great.
Oh, nice. Yeah, decent. Now, one of the questions we ask our science guests is, could you talk a little bit about what your PhD is in? Like, what are you a doctor of in science?
Yeah, for sure. So I think technically it's a doctorate in ecology and evolutionary biology, but I'm kind of focusing specifically on, I was doing ecology and physiology of animals. And so trying to understand where they live and what about their physiology allows them to live there. And so I was primarily working with hummingbirds in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. So there are a few species of hummingbirds that live up at like really high elevations in the Sierras. And so I was looking at what about their physiology allows them to live at these high elevations where it's actually pretty hard to live. Like it's low oxygen, it's cold, and yet we see these hummingbirds that are like 2 grams being there totally fine. And so that's kind of what I was looking at.
We had talked, I believe you were on the podcast as a full expert guest.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you back. I just so enjoyed our chat. Like these hummingbirds that live in the mountains are kind of like they're rare, and it's weird that they're up there. Is that what intrigued you?
Yeah, well, it's actually, I mean, hummingbirds specifically are actually surprisingly good at living in mountains, and so working in the U.S., but down in like Peru and Colombia, hummingbirds like exploded. There's so many species down there. At a single feeder, sometimes you can get like 10 to 20 species just at your own house, which is wild compared to the US where we just have like 17 species across the entire United States and Canada. But yeah, I mean, I think what really intrigued me about it is that I'm from Utah, where there's lots of mountains there, and I kind of like grew up going up and skiing and hiking in the mountains. And so being able to like ask questions like how are these animals living up there too, that's kind of what intrigued me.
I asked you on this podcast, and it'd be really cool to explain to everybody. It's no joke to pursue a PhD. When you were younger, what was your driving force to get into science and start studying animals?
Yeah, I actually didn't start getting into science until I was in college. So I know a lot of people's stories are like, I was really inquisitive when I was a child and like I wanted to do science forever. I didn't. I didn't even know about science until really I got into college. But I just knew that I liked being outside and liked learning about animals and plants and cared about the environment. And when I found out that I could do that for a job, that was kind of like mind blowing. I was like, I can just have a job where I'm working outside and like and learning about them. and so that's kind of what like starting to do field work and getting into that is kind of what helped me pursue a PhD.
Cool. Now, we had talked before hummingbirds, you studied garter snakes too, right?
Yeah. And I know
Could
you
you talk a little bit about that? I thought that was a awesome little, segue into you studying the hummingbirds.
Yeah. Well, so I had actually never held a bird before. I mean, like I'd held like pet birds, but never held a bird before I got into grad school. When I was an undergraduate, I was working with garter snakes and lizards, and we were kind of looking at how, if they lived in cities, how that changed their physiology. So we were looking at like hormones and kind of stress hormones, stuff like that. And so we would catch them, take a little bit of blood, and let them go. But it was fun working with them. We would catch them outside of their hibernacula, which is where like a ton of garter snakes go to hibernate together. So during the winter time, like they're not out and about. They actually hibernate. And so in the spring, when they come out, there's just like hundreds of garter snakes the same place. And so we would just like catch them by the handful.
I love that. Thank you I laughed so hard. I was re-listening to us chat about garter snakes, and I think that was just a funny part. Just picturing just scooping up just handfuls of garter snakes.
Yeah.
So why hummingbirds? As you transitioned into your PhD work, what was it about hummingbirds besides your interest in the hummingbirds that live in the mountains? What was it? Was that the thing that got you hooked with hummingbirds, or was it the species, the bird itself?
Yeah, so there was a few reasons why we wanted to work with hummingbirds. One of the first ones was kind of just logistical. It's actually pretty easy to catch hummingbirds because they just are so into, like, you can put a hummingbird feeder up and they're so into it that they'll just come in and we can just catch them at the feeder. Another reason is that as it's been getting warmer with climate change, a lot of species are moving upslope, so like going to colder areas because it's getting warmer, or they're moving northward towards the poles. And we've actually had found some evidence previously that hummingbirds were doing this. So we knew they were moving upslope as it's been getting warmer. And so we wanted to test, okay, like if they're moving upslope, are they going to continue to move upslope in the future as it continues to warm? But even if when you move upslope, there's actually less oxygen available, so we didn't know if that would be like a hindrance to them moving upslope. Would that be too hard for them? And so those two things together, kind of like we've already known they're moving with climate change. They're really easy to catch. We can get like a good sample size for the science. Those two kind of together helped us work with hummingbirds.
I find it wild that you're like, yeah, hummingbirds are easy to catch, and and like, I'm excited to tell you we set up a hummingbird feeder with your advice, and I'm sure people are going to have like actual questions about that for you later. And we had hummingbirds this summer. It was so cute.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure you get. Are you getting like ruby hummingbirds?
They're big boys. What they are, like,
Yeah.
They're big guys. They're not little tiny things. They're like pretty chunky. I don't know what species is it. I'm so sorry. I'm not a hummingbird expert.
No, I'm guessing probably either ruby-throated or black-chinned. One of those.
Oh, cool. I'll have to Google image either of those, and then I'll have to get back to you. I don't know. So hummingbirds, like moving upslope just means like moving up the mountains? Is that what you meant there?
Yeah. So with climate change, because it's getting warmer, a lot of species are like plants and animals. It's a lot of things are trying to track their like historic climate. And so if it's warmer, like we can give this example, like I'm in California. If it's warmer in California now, and a species used to live here, they might move up to Oregon to try to track their like historic climate. And so you can do that a few ways. You can move northwards, which, as we know, it gets cooler as you move northwards. But another way is you can move upslope because it's cooler as you move upslope.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you clarified that. I was a little fuzzy on that. So, okay, question, Dr. Spence. How does one catch a hummingbird? You said that there you can get a bunch at a feeder. Like you're not out there trying to like scoop them up with like butterfly nets, or is that how you do it? Like I don't know.
No, I like to think about it like there's the classic cartoon where there's like a box and a stick and like a piece of cheese or something under the box, and if the mouse goes under and you pull the stick out and the box comes down to trap it, we actually just put a cage around the feeder, and so when the hummingbird in, we lower the cage down and trap it. And so my field work, I mean, like it's kind of historical for ecology PhD students. They're doing lots of rough field work and they're hiking around all over the place. My field work was in a camp chair next to a hummingbird feeder. And when a hummingbird came in, I just lowered the cage and went and grabbed the feeder. So it was pretty easy field work.
It's like that game Mousetrap.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the last piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
So did you just like, were you close to internet? What did you do? Just like play an app on your phone?
Oh,
like,
I listened to a lot of
Pokemon
podcasts.
Go or something. Oh, you were listening to podcasts.
I know. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to books. I mean, this was like 4 summers in a row of me doing this. So I was running out of podcasts.
Oh man, did you regret that? Like, did you see your peers go off to do some rugged hiking to catch some random crow or something, and you're like, well, I'll just stay here?
Well, it was kind of nice. One of my lab mates actually worked in California as well, and he was working with woodpeckers that would colonize areas after wildfires. And so sometimes I'd go out and help him, and we would be like hiking like 10 miles a day, and I was like kind of glad that I get to sit around.
As you move forward with your so you finish your PhD, what can you tell everybody what you're working on now? Like, are you doing more research? Are you in academia as a teacher now, like a professor? I'm not sure the right title for that is, though.
Oh yeah. So this summer I've been working just kind of with my same advisor. So just working to finish research up, like all of our projects. A lot of this research takes a lot of time. And so I think people are often surprised how slow academia moves. And so we submitted a few papers this summer and we're hoping to get them out by next year. And then outside of that, I'm just kind of applying for jobs. And so I'm hoping to do a postdoc in ecology and evolution. And so continuing to work with birds and continuing to work doing field work and stuff like that.
Awesome. Cool. Anything in particular in your post, like anything in particular, or it just depends where you wind up?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of with postdocs, it's a lot of like if people have projects, someone to do it. But what I'll actually probably be doing is a lot more analysis. And so working at computers, that's kind of the way that ecology is going these days is using big data and using these data sets that have been collected for like 50 years and having people to do the statistics and people doing the analysis on that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I had talked. That's what I'm finding as I talk to people on my show. The ecologists are like, man, there's so much data. They have to teach themselves coding, or like they're on like the internet. Stuff. Did you have to do that too?
Yes, and so I've been working on a project with the Breeding Bird Survey, and so the Breeding Bird Survey is it's actually in the United States, and it's people go out every year to these spots, and they do like a 50-mile transect. So they start in their car, like half mile or 800 meters, they stop and they listen for birds. And so they've been since the 60s. And so there's thousands of spots across the United States and Canada where people have just been collecting data. And so we're actually looking at, this is a project that we're trying to get out right now, is using like hundreds of thousands of bird records to look at how climate change is affecting bird populations. But but like that's kind of the level that ecology is at now. Like it's just tons and tons of data and doing analysis. So we're doing all this analysis in it's a coding program called R, and like I hit go on my computer and it takes like days to just do one single model. I'm like, okay, like I hope this works.
Time to go listen to some more podcasts.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's cool. Does that have to do with the paper you're hoping to get published, or is this like what's you working on right now?
Yeah. So this is a project that we're working on now, but it was kind of like a side project for my PhD. So
okay, cool.
like I was saying, everything is just like low in academia. So I've been working on this project for like 3 years, and we're like hoping to publish it.
Oh, well, it sounds fascinating.
I'm excited.
Oh, cool. 2 more questions. There's one of them.
I know that's my pup.
Yeah. So we always ask because of course Bunsen and Beaker are dogs, and people follow us because we have dogs, right? That's a dog account.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your pets? Or your pets?
Yeah, for sure. So we have one dog named Bo, after the drink. And
not Bubba, like the bounty hunter.
No. Although we've gotten that a few times. They're like, Boba Fett, and we're like, no, Boba the drink, the tea. And so we got her during the quarantine, and she's been great. She's a little Maltipoo, and she loves people. She loves going to the dog park. And then we've actually been doing rope, which is kind of like a Uber, but for dog watching. Oh. And so people can contact you, and we actually have one of the dogs here now that we watch a lot, and her name is Tupac, and she's like this funny mutt. I know. So we have Boba and Tupac right now.
Oh my goodness. That does sound, that sounds like some band, hey? My last question before we open up the floor to a guest to ask you some questions about hummingbirds. And this is one I regret I didn't ask you on the podcast, is when you catch a hummingbird and you obviously have to handle it, right? Do you have to wear gloves to protect yourself, or are they just so little? I'm just wondering about that.
Oh yeah. No, so I don't wear any gloves or anything. They're real small. And so one of the hummingbird species that I work with, they're called calliope hummingbirds. They live in the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Rocky Mountains. And so they go from California and Utah all the way up into Alberta and BC. They only weigh 2 grams. And so they're teeny. And they're actually the smallest migrating bird in the world. But you catch them, and it's more just being careful. You can't hold them too tight. You have to kind of grasp them carefully, and you're like, oh, and then I always feed them. So I have a syringe full of sugar water. And so when I catch them, I feed them to make sure they're full. And then we do oftentimes we would either monitor their metabolism, or we would collect poop. And so I would just make sure they were fine and let them go. So we always let them go.
Does it ever get old holding them? I just can't imagine that. Just must feel fuzzies every time you're holding them. But I guess if you're every day, you're kind of oh my God, got to get the poop again.
No, every single time was fun. Honestly, you should see my iPhone, just how many pictures I have. I'd catch another one and be look at this one, and take 5 pictures of it, and oh my God, look at this one. It was catching hundreds of birds.
Did you start
over my PhD
Instagram account? Did you start an Instagram account?
I should have.
Oh my God! If you have all those pictures, Austin, you need to start an Instagram account for Hummingbird. All of your free time you have. Anyway. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to our show week after week. If you want to know how to support the Science Podcast, here are a couple ways. It's always going to be free to download, so you'll never have to worry about paying for it. But, things do cost money running a podcast, and here are a couple ways you could help us out. One is join our Patreon page. It's amazing. It's growing. It's almost like an extended family. There's multiple tiers of support, and we have lots of fun perks for being part of our Patreon page. The other way you could support us is giving us an awesome review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, anywhere you can rate our podcast. Give us a great review. The third way you could support the show is checking out the BunsenBurnerBMD.com website. We have awesome merch there. We worked really hard finding quality merchandise that's comfortable with vibrant colors. And you'll find in limited quantities over the next couple months, maybe even less, the 2022 Bunsen and Beaker calendar. So 3 ways to support us: the Patreon page, 2, give us a great review, 3, head over to our merch stop and see if there's anything there you'd like. Thanks, everybody. Okay, folks, just the ground rules again. Dr. Spence is with us today. He has a PhD. Ecology, is that close enough? Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. And he knows a lot about hummingbirds. So if you have a question for him about hummingbirds, maybe garter snakes too, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can ask to be a speaker, and I'll give you the mic. Two couple rules. I do check your account to make sure you're following us, and if you're not, I do peruse your account to see if you're appropriate, and no foul language, please, when you're asking a question. All right, Paula, you are up. And then after Paula, anybody else, you just have to ask to be a speaker to ask your question. If you're shy, just direct message me and I can ask the question for you. Okay, go ahead, Paula.
Oh, I'm sorry. You cut out, so I was waiting. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
Go ahead,
problem.
Paula.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
Good. Hi, thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks. I'm from your PhD neck of the woods. I'm a big Yukon fan, and I'm from Connecticut.
Nice.
Oh, I'm from Ellington, so.
Very cool.
But anyway, oh, yeah. But listen, I actually one time held a hummingbird in my hand. He was sick. I found him on the ground, and I actually picked him up, and we fed him, and he was drinking, and we gave him some sugar water, and it was just so cool to see how long their tongues are.
I know, it's awesome.
I know, and but sadly he didn't make it. We had him overnight in a box, and we tried to see if he'd make it the next day, but he just didn't. It was kind of sad. But anyway, but my question is, I know they migrate some crazy amount of miles. Now, living on the West Coast, is it different on the West Coast as far as their migrators than the ones from the East? Like, they can go all the way up to Canada, I'm sure, in the East, but where did they always go in the winter? And in a neighborhood too, of being in Connecticut, sort of a two-part question. How do they fly in an area and always come back to the same spots? Is it they have a flight pattern, so to speak?
Yeah, no. So those are two really good questions. So out, kind of all of the hummingbirds in just north of like Texas and Arizona. So on the East Coast, all of the hummingbirds migrate back to Mexico during the wintertime. And so out on the East Coast, there's the ruby-throated hummingbird. That's kind of what we get in Connecticut. And those guys actually migrate across the Gulf of Mexico. And for a really long time, scientists didn't think they could fly that far. And they even thought in like the early 1900s that they like would ride on the backs of other birds and just like fly across. Yeah, because they just didn't know. But like now that we can like track birds a lot better, we know that they can just make that trip across the Gulf of Mexico down to Mexico, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. They make that in about a day. So it's like 24 hours of straight flying. But out on the West Coast, all the hummingbirds, they still migrate down to Mexico. They just don't have to cross like the Gulf. The second part of that question, how they come back, birds are really good at, so they have like multiple types of maps in their brain. So they remember like specific places. And so like as on the West Coast, if they're flying up and we know that they remember mountain ranges. And so they'll like fly up the correct mountain range.
Oh my gosh.
But then they also have, most birds have like magnetic molecules in their brain. And so they can actually sense like similar as a compass, like magnetic waves. And so they know to fly north, like that's how they know to fly north. And so actually there's this really cool NASA program that monitors solar flares and like solar radiation. And one of the biggest people that use that program are homing pigeon racers, because they can't do races when there's huge solar flares because it messes up the magnetism. And so then homing pigeons will get lost.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
All right. Is your question answered, Paula?
Yeah, it was. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks for taking my question.
There are people that race pigeons? What?
Yeah.
What did you say? What?
So they're homing pigeons, they'll have like races for them, and then the people that race them have to make sure that there's no solar flares during the race.
All right, I have a question from us. Words and Flowers. They don't want to speak. They have some questions for you. I can probably ask a couple of them. So the question is, I have lots of questions about hummingbirds, but we'll go with one by one. Do they actually hit each other when they fight over feeders? It sounds like they're hurting each other.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I mean, they might, but it's more of just like a stance thing. Like they're just like trying to scare each other off. They're real dramatic.
They're dramatic. That's the second part. The hummingbirds will often fly up and stare at me on the porch, and they chase the others off the feeders. Are they being curious? Or are they trying to get me involved in the skirmish?
I think they're probably just being curious. But like they're so territorial. Like some species are extraterritorial, and when I was working with them, like we'd have feeders set up. If I went to go change the sugar water, like they would come down and be like, "What are you doing? What, like, are you sure you should be doing?" Like they're not, and they'll fight off like hawks and big birds. They'll like, if they come near the feeder, a hawk or something, they'll chase it off.
Okay. All right. And all right. So, oops. Just trying to organize this. I lost Words and Flowers. The last one from Words and Flowers. Seems that the females are the most territorial. Is that normal? Is there a difference between male and females?
Yeah.
Or does it depend, I guess? I don't know.
So hummingbirds actually aren't very social. Like a lot of birds will flock together or like stay together for safety reasons. But hummingbirds aren't, and the males and the females are both pretty territorial. I've never heard of males or females specifically being more territorial, but you might just live around a place where the females are like ready to fight.
All right. So those are questions from Words and Flowers. Kay Lucchini, you're up as a speaker. I'm going to go to a direct message question after that. And then Dakota Lane, you're up after that. Jennifer, you're on deck. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Kay Lucchini.
Okay. Hi. Yes, I'm Kathy.
Kathy, yes, sorry.
No, it's okay. Dr. Spence, I live here in Orange County also. In fact, we're pretty close by.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, we have a hummingbird feeder. I actually have a two-pronged question. We use just plain sugar water, and I was wondering if that was actually doing the hummingbirds as a wild species a disservice. It's just plain sugar, white sugar and water. And I don't purchase it anyway. I just put it together myself and put it in a Tupperware and, let it dissolve.
Yeah.
Is that actually unhealthy for hummingbirds?
No. So actually, like one of the big things that I try to tell everyone is that like never buy the store feeders. It's just like a huge ripoff. We don't actually know if it's healthy, like because they have preservatives and stuff. And the hummingbirds don't really care if it's red or not. And so what I always make, and this is kind of what like everyone thinks is the standard, is 1-to-4 ratio of water to sugar. And so like a cup of water and a quarter cup of sugar. And as long as you're just doing that with plain white sugar, that's just like the best and healthiest thing. And
Totally.
And like people often ask like, oh, is it good? Like, should we take our feeders down? Like, especially like when you're up north and you don't know if they're trying to migrate back. My thing is the birds know what's best for them. And so like if they want to eat from the sugar water, they're going to do it. And so I always just, my big thing is keep it clean, try to change it about once a week, but just like plain white sugar and water is the best.
Great. That's good to know. Thank you for that. And then the other question is, you mentioned their migration patterns and, they're generally passing through. How long do they generally stay in one area? Because it seems like a couple of our birds have been around for a while.
Yeah.
They like it here.
So it really depends on the species. So like out east, when I lived in Connecticut, those would be around during the summer. So like by August, they were all migrating back. But out west, it's quite a bit different. So up in like BC and Washington, there are actually hummingbirds that stay around year round. And so they don't migrate at all. They're Anna's hummingbirds. And my parents live in Seattle. And during, I literally on Christmas one year, it was snowing and there was a hummingbird eating from the feeder. And we were just like, what? This is wild.
Yeah.
But so Anna's hummingbirds don't migrate very much. There's other hummingbirds, like rufous hummingbirds, that they fly up to Alaska and then down to Mexico every year. And they actually spend more time migrating than they do spending any time anywhere. So like they're almost constantly on the move. So it just kind of depends.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to know. We do clean out the feeder like once a week. I hear about issues with bacteria in the feeder holes where if they get their beaks can swell, and obviously they wouldn't be able to eat if that's the problem. So, we do clean it out. But okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. And like we just use soap and water, and like if you just do it once a week, like it's totally fine.
That's what we do. Yeah. In fact, that's my project after this is over.
Nice.
Thank you.
Great question, Kathy. I'll try and remember your name next time.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, you only have about 80 million followers and people who you interact with, so I get it. It's totally fine. Thank you.
So we have a question from somebody. Arnav Raha is excited to ask you kind of two questions. The first one is, what do you know about vocal learning in hummingbirds? I don't know. That's what the question is. I don't know if that makes sense to you. That's the question.
So I don't know a ton about it, but I do know that there's some people at the University of California, Riverside, led by Dr. Chris Clark, who have been studying vocal learning. And so a big thing with birds is some birds know their song innately. So like it's built into their genetics and they like have to learn it from anybody. They just know it. And then other birds have to learn their songs from their parents. And so I know that Chris Clark at Riverside, he was trying to study that. And so they were raising hummingbirds from eggs without their parents around, which was wild because they had to feed them literally every 15 minutes. And so you can imagine through the night for like 2 weeks, they had to feed these hummingbirds every 15 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if the results have been published yet, but I do know that that's what he was studying.
Oh, I muted myself. Cool. And the other part of the question from Arnav is, I hope I'm saying the name right, Arnav Raha, is do you know where people could where people could go to learn more about hummingbirds?
Yeah.
What's a good resource if you want to know more about hummingbirds?
I know that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is based in Ithaca, New York, they have a ton of great information on their websites. And then the Audubon Society. So they have like chapters around the United States and Canada. They have lots of fun articles too.
Awesome. Okay, Dakota Lane, you're up with your question. Jennifer, you're on deck. Go ahead, Dakota. Dakota Lane. Hi, Dakota. Connecting. Speaker. Okay. All right. We're going to go to Jennifer. Jennifer, hockey librarian. Go ahead. Ask your question, Jennifer. Dakota, I'll come back to you if you can hear. Go ahead. Jennifer.
Hey, so my grandparents had a house on Lake Ontario. They actually caught a homing pigeon that got lost once.
Whoa, cool.
And there's actually a racing association. You can call them and they'll come pick up the bird that got lost. So that was fascinating. But my question is actually, you said that the hummingbirds don't care if stuff is red. Now, my grandfather always used to swear that you had to have like red flowers to go on there. You didn't color the stuff that they drank, but there had to be red around. Is that just folklore?
Yeah, well, so I may have been, I may have misspoken. They don't care if the sugar is red. So like all the stuff you buy in the grocery, like that's at Home Depot or a grocery store, right, that doesn't really matter. But they are attracted to red, and so like they such a good eye for the color red that they'll go to flowers, they'll go to a feeder if it has some red on it. It's to the point that if you're wearing a red hat, sometimes they'll come up and be like, "Is this a flower? Like, do I have anything to eat?"
What?
So they're very good at seeing red, but like the actual sugar water doesn't need to be red.
Cool. So I should still look for a red feeder if I'm going to invest in one.
Yeah.
And the next question I had is over on the East Coast, like Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. area, there are take down your bird feeder warnings. I think that's seeds, but does that also apply to hummingbirds?
So just to kind of give everyone a little bit of context, there has been a mysterious disease going around the eastern part of the United States, and it's partial through feeders. So we don't really know what it is. I don't think anyone has isolated it, but it's hurting a lot of birds on the East Coast. And I think for the most of the summer they was up to take down all of your bird feeders. I didn't see if it included hummingbird feeders, but I would just for safety reasons also do it, like take your hummingbird feeders down. But only just like a week ago, they said you can put them back up. And I would check with like your local area before doing that.
Okay.
But
I'm not too far from Cornell, so I'll give them a shout.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting, and we just didn't understand what was happening this summer. I don't think they've figured it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Great questions tonight. We have another question from direct messaging. It's from Marie. Marie's question, this was a good one. I'm curious about this, Austin. What two-part can we do to get more hummingbirds in our area? And have you been bitten by a snake?
Well, this is my mom, so to get more hummingbirds, there's actually a really great website. The Audubon Society has you can like put in your zip code and they'll give you local plants to plant to try to get more birds to your garden. And so I would definitely check that out, because it both increases like native plants and then gets more birds to you. And I haven't been by a snake. The lab that made me get bit by a snake so that I would be less scared of them. And it didn't make me less scared of them because it was still scary.
Okay. Is that you in the profile picture of your mom with her?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
When I was younger.
That's what I was wondering about that. Okay. Well, that's pretty sneaky to get a question in there. Another question from direct message from Marianne Bornhoft. It's similar to the whole feeder hygiene thing. She's really have to change the feeder every day. They went on vacation, forgot to take it down. The water got all moldy.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do it every day. I think the recommended is if it's like hot and humid, like they can kind of house mold easier, they recommend changing it twice a week. And if you're in like a more dry environment, once a week. But I definitely, I don't change mine once a day. So.
Okay. Another direct message question. I think this one was answered from B. Phillips. Was are hummingbirds? Oh no, maybe not. This is actually a good question. Are hummingbirds aggressive to other birds? I've watched other birds chase them away from the feeder. I'm not sure if it's the hummingbirds, but like, are hummingbirds brave enough to like throw down with other full-size birds? Do they have like Chihuahua syndrome?
Yeah, they 100% do. I've seen hummingbirds chase off red-tailed hawks. So species that are like 100 times bigger than them, they'll chase them off and like poke at them with their beak and be like, "Get out of here, go!"
Wow, that's crazy. That's wild. Are they just? Can they get caught by the hawk? Like, are they just too little? Are they just like? Like the X-wings attacking the Death Star? Like the Death Star just couldn't hit them? Like, is that what was going on there?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. So hummingbirds don't really have a ton of predators. And so that's kind of why that they're so brave, because they can go after this hawk knowing that the hawk's not going to eat them at all. And so they can make the hawk leave, and the hawk's, I think the hawk is not scared. I think it's just more annoyed, like, I'll leave.
This is the funniest thing I've heard today. Okay, so we have about 17 minutes left. Austin, are you okay with the time there?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna throw it over to Dr. Nancy Von Meyer. So Nancy, you have a question, and then I'll answer some more from direct message.
Thanks, Jason. Question about honeybees and bees seem to come to our hummingbird feeders, and are those, they bother the hummingbirds, or do they eat the bees, or do they eat insects and the water as well?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. So they don't. I actually did one of my studies for my PhD was we caught hummingbirds and we collected their poop, and we could use DNA barcoding. So that's like looking at the DNA in their poop to figure out what they were eating. And so one of the big questions is, we know that hummingbirds eat insects because nectar doesn't really have any nutrients outside of sugar. It's just kind of like carbs. So they get a lot of energy from nectar, but they don't get like proteins, anything that they need to use to build muscle or build feathers. And so they eat a lot of insects. And I was actually curious about this because I also sometimes would get bees at my feeder. But we didn't find any bee DNA, and so we don't think that they eat bees. They eat a lot of spiders and flies and stuff like that. But I think that the bees, just like the sugar water too, like they similarly, like hummingbirds, think it's nectar. And that's why they come to the hummingbird feeders.
They eat bees? What the heck? They're crazy, these little hummingbirds.
Yeah, well, so we actually didn't find them eating bees. And so they're not...
Spiders. I'm sorry, spiders. They eat spiders.
Oh, yeah, they eat a lot of spiders.
What? That's what I meant to say. I love these little things.
They actually use spiders a lot. And so they will eat spiders, but they'll also seal their webs to help make their nests. And so they'll use the webbing to hold the nest together. And then they'll also... if a spider caught a bug in its web, they'll also eat the bug and steal the bug from the spider.
Oh my goodness. I'm loving hummingbirds the more I talk to you. Every time something new, and I'm just loving them even more. Dakota Lane, I don't know if you can speak or not. You've been a speaker for a while. Question: Did you get your mic figure out there? Delaney. Maybe not. Okay. We'll go to direct message from Mary Beezer. Question for Dr. Spence, please. We struggle with keeping yellow jackets away from the hummingbird feeders. Any suggestions to keep the yellow jackets away? Yeah, they're annoying.
Unfortunately, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, like similar to the hummingbirds, the yellow jackets and bees are just good at finding flowers, and so they see that like fake flower on the feeder, and there's some food, and I don't know how to stop it.
Okay, I'm just organizing some questions from direct.
Can I ask a follow-up on the spider nest thing?
Oh, yeah.
This is Jennifer. So I always had this image in my mind that hummingbirds are like constantly on the move. Do they actually sit on their eggs?
Yeah, that's a good question. They do. So their eggs are like, because they're so small, they can lose heat really quickly. So you can think of like a big bottle of water, if you warm it up, stays warm for a long time, as opposed to like, I don't know, like a cup of water that might not keep that heat. Because the eggs are so small, they can lose heat really quickly. And so during the breeding season, the females are always doing the parental care. The males don't do anything at all. And so the females have a rough life because they have to be feeding all the time because they have such a high metabolism. And then if they're not feeding, they have to be sitting on the eggs.
That sounds familiar. Thank you.
Explains why they're annoying. Just having a rough day. They're just sick of being a single mom and with deadbeat dad hummingbirds out there.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I lost track of what I was doing. Direct message from Jet. Jet asks, does it matter where the feeders are placed?
Yeah, so this is a good question. And this kind of stands for all bird feeders, not just hummingbird feeders. A really big danger with bird feeders is the birds coming in, and then a lot of times we like to put bird feeders next to windows so we can watch them. And if that can lead to window strikes. And so window strikes is the birds don't understand glass. They think it's kind of see-through, and they'll come in and hit the window. And so kind of the rule of thumb for all feeders is to either have the feeder within 3 feet of the window, or 1 meter, or at least 6 feet away. And so that kind of limits window strikes because if it's within 3 feet, they're going to be slowing down by the time they get to the feeder. If it's 6 feet away, they're not going to be close to the window.
Okay, all right. So hopefully that helped Jet with that question. Dakota, is your mic working? Dakota direct messaged me.
Hi.
Okay, there we go. I don't know why it hasn't been working. Hi, Austin.
Hi, I know Dakota, so they're great.
I want
plants. Look at these plants that you have in the audience tonight. Look at this. No, go ahead.
Definitely plants. I wanted to ask, I was really interested when you were talking about, kind of, like hummingbirds, moving to higher elevations as we see climate change. And I wanted to ask, kind of 2 things. One, what's the difference between hummingbirds that don't live in higher elevations and ones that do? How do they deal with, having a less amount of oxygen, I guess? And second, if I'm thinking they might possibly have higher count red blood cell counts is what I'm thinking. I'm just wondering if it's kind of how marine animals and marine mammals take care of not being able to breathe 24/7 like most land mammals.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and you're exactly on the right path. Know a lot more about hummingbirds in the Andes because they live at 20,000 feet above sea level, way higher than anywhere in North America. And what's actually really cool is that there's been multiple evolutions. So it's called Convergent Evolution for everybody, where different lineages evolve the same adaptation. And hummingbirds have regularly evolved better hemoglobin. And so the hemoglobin is what's in red blood cells that captures the oxygen. And so over and over again, when hummingbirds move to high elevations, we see this evolution of getting better hemoglobin to grab more oxygen and be able to transport it to the rest of their body. And so, I was working in North America, and so I think we don't know if that's going to happen with Anna's hummingbirds, but I think it's an exciting question to think about.
Well, that's so cool. That's like the Tibetan Mastiff.
Yeah.
They have like a completely different like hemoglobin, red blood cell count than other dogs because they lived way up high in the mountains.
And it's pretty cool that it's like across birds, dogs, humans, like it's just like a similar thing that happens at high elevations.
Well, we live in the mountains. I wonder what my hemoglobin's doing. Terrible. Dakota's questions get answered? I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Can I ask one more?
Sure. Nope. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask as well. Like, I'm interested in the migration that you were talking about of some hummingbirds. That's insane that they like make a trip in like a day. Because I refuse to walk to my fridge within 5 minutes. So, but I wanted to ask, like, you know, when they migrate, are they going for like the same type of flowers in like both regions, or like do they have like kind of like a favorite, or are they pollinating like different flowers depending on where they go essentially?
Yeah, I think so. I was kind of talking a little bit about the diet study that we did where we were looking at the insects they were eating. We were also looking at plant DNA. And what we found is that they're super generalists. They'll like eat anything that has nectar. They're not, I mean, I think that's why if they see anything red, they're like, oh, they'll go check it out. Like, does this have food? Does this have food? And so when they're up in like New England and Connecticut, they'll just eat any flowers that are there. And then when they migrate all the way down to Mexico and Costa Rica, they'll just eat any flowers that are there. I think they're pretty generalist.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming.
All right, I'll open it up again. Does anybody have any questions for Austin about hummingbirds or anything else? And if I missed your message in direct message, quickly like send me another one. I got inundated with like 7 or 8, and also normal Bunsen and Beaker Empire messaging. So that was a little bit to parse out who was messaging me. I think I got it though. But like if you, oh my goodness. Okay, I think my wife has a question, Austin.
Great,
Mr. Z. So she's on my Mr. Z account. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Oh my goodness. Okay, what's your question, Chris?
Well, I'm wondering where the hummingbirds nest, because we did, like you said, have hummingbirds this year. Where can we find or see their cute little nests next to the robins' nests, or no?
Yeah, so this is also a question I have. I am always amazed about how hard it is to find their nests. And like whenever people are so lucky enough to, I see people on Twitter be like, there's a hummingbird nesting outside my window. And I'm like, how are you so lucky? But they just nest in the trees like any other bird. But because their nests are so small, it's just really hard to find them. I think of the 4 years I did fieldwork, I saw one nest.
Super secretive little things.
Yeah, and they're just so small. They're like little teacups.
Oh. Why do you want to go find their nests, Chris? Keep Beaker away from birds. Really.
I just think they're so cute, and I want to see how tiny they are.
Keep Beaker away.
I also have a follow-up question. How did you ensure when you were trapping them that you remained, I guess, non-intrusive, and that they remained wild and not, I guess, desensitized to humans or domesticated in any way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And especially like anytime anyone works with wild, like making sure that you're doing the most humane and safe thing. For us, we would never hold the bird longer than, so we were actually, most of what we were doing was actually looking at slept overnight and how much energy they were consuming. And so we would never hold the bird longer than a single day, because we would like catch them and then monitor them during the nighttime and then let them go at the exact same spot in the morning. And I can, and kind of going back to how territorial they are and how like non-social they are, they never get used to you. They're just like hate every minute of it. They're like, where am I? Am I here? What am I doing? And so we would let them go, and we actually would band them. And so bird banding is where you put like a little, I mean, with hummingbirds, it's teeny tiny. It's just like a teeny piece of aluminum. around them to like, in case anyone else captures them, we can kind of learn about their life history. We would never catch the same bird again, and we would see them, and I could like always tell if we were working in the same spot. I was like, I know that one knows what the cage is. Like, it's not coming back to the cage. So they would like learn really quickly and be like I'm not doing this again.
It was a rough go. It was a one-time deal for them.
Yep.
I'd imagine there's some birds that just are like, oh, I got caught again. Don't like, it's kind of dopey, and it doesn't matter. Whereas hummingbirds are like, no way, bro, you're not getting me again.
Yeah, and we know that it's pretty safe because there's actually a group at the University of California, Davis, and they catch birds and they put they're called RFID tags in them, and so it's kind of like a tag similar to like a chip for your dog. And what's cool is that they can put these tags in these birds, and then they have feeders set up all around the town, and they can see which feeders they go to. And so they know that these birds still live for like years after. So it's like super safe. It's fine to catch them, but they just like learn. They're like, not doing that again.
That's cool. Okay, we got. Do you got time for 2 more questions, Austin? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Aaron, you have a question. Go ahead, Aaron. You just got to take yourself off mute.
Yes, you had just said, Bernie. Anyway, what you said that the hummingbirds are moving to higher climates. We live in Denver, Colorado, so a little bit higher than normal, and then like in the mountains. So, where are they moving, and why are they moving to higher climates? I guess, and then like what specific areas?
Yeah, so the way that I think about it is almost like animal plants are understanding that it's getting warmer, and if you can kind of think about it like a thermostat, where like we could just turn our thermostat down and it would like make our house cooler, but because they can't do that, instead they move to places that are cooler. So they're moving to like northward towards the poles, or they're moving upslope because they want to track their like historic climate conditions. And so in North America, what that usually means is like animals are moving up towards Canada, plants are moving up towards Canada, or instead of moving northwards, they can just go up the Rocky Mountains, they can go up the Sierra Nevada mountains. And so it works out great, like they can move up. But for the mountains, it's kind of scary because, like you said, you're in Denver, Colorado, and if animals are already living at the peaks of the mountains, like they don't really have anywhere to go. And so that's kind of a big question in conservation right now. Like, where are those animals going to go to?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like the mountain goats and stuff like that are already on the top or close to the top. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great question, Aaron. So stuff's moving up to Canada. We are still going to send Canada geese back down to you part of the year. They're the worst. You can have them for half the time.
No.
Send them down out of Canada with just their grossness. So sorry about that. Melinda, did you have a question? I gave you the chance to speak. Melinda will be our last question tonight.
Thanks, Jason. I have 2 quick things. One is I was wondering how many babies do hummingbirds have every year?
Yeah. Can you hear? It said my connection was lost. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I think the most that they have is 2. And so you can look up, there's like some great pictures of people that have found nests, and you can look up hummingbirds in the nest, and the nest is so small and they're just like squished in there right before they're about to fledge. But yeah, I don't think more than 2.
Okay, thank you. I used to watch on a webcam this Phoebe Allen hummingbird in Southern California.
Oh, yeah.
And I just saw her fighting a snake one day.
Yeah, well, that's wild. Snakes are great at eating eggs. Like, they love eggs. It's just like a great resource because it's just basically like fats. And so snakes are one of the biggest egg predators, and so it's cool that the female was fighting it.
Yeah, it actually left the nest area. One of the birds had fledged. One of the eggs had opened up, and one was not opening. And eventually she tossed that egg out of the nest. I guess it had gone bad, and so the snake could smell that it was bad or something.
Yeah, it probably was like the bird. I mean, especially if the other one had fledged, the birds probably like knew that the one egg wasn't going to come, and just like instead of having it be like a bait, just got rid of it.
Yeah. Anyway, it was fascinating, and so was your conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, just from me to you, Dr. Spence, thank you for taking the time to talk to audience and random folks maybe tuned in from Twitter, because anybody can join a space that's public, and hopefully everybody learned a lot about hummingbirds. Please give Austin a follow on Twitter here, everybody. We got there's a good 50-some people still in the room right now, so make sure you give Austin a follow.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've always enjoyed talking with you, so it's always fun.
It's good. I'll let you go. You're a busy person, and you got to get back to. I'm sure Boba's got to go out peeing pretty quick. Or I don't know if you guys have a yard.
They're just hanging out with me in the back, but yeah, thanks for having me.
You betcha. All right. So at the end of Spaces, I do Bunsen and Beaker overtime. If anybody has any questions about, you can ask or jump up to be a speaker. Dr. Spence, you can peace out, or you can stay for this. You're always welcome to stay for open time. Sometimes it's another like 5-10 minutes. But if you like to go, you can go. Go ahead.
I definitely want to hear.
Does anybody have any questions about Bunsen or Beaker? If you're a speaker, you can just turn your mic on and ask.
Okay, I didn't want to be rude and just jump in, but
okay.
This is Paula. I have to ask: Are you almost drone ready? Because I'm like palpitating here, wanting to see all your drone shots. Are you guys got that thing down yet?
Yeah. I've got the hang of flying the thing. We took it to the island. I was hoping to get some really amazing shots. And then the first day we were like, I took a whole bunch of cool shots, and then we realized the entire West Coast, there's no drones allowed.
No.
So.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that's too bad, because there's some times the drone, but it kind of makes sense. Like they don't want.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pristine area of Canada. I haven't had it up lately because it's been raining. We've had like 3 days of solid rain here. There should be some drone footage in Monday's pup date. You know how we do the pup date every week?
Yes.
Yeah, there'll be some shots in there.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's great. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think Chrissy Seals asked, how wore out are you after Beaker Tuesday? That's been really fun. Give me a 100 if you've liked Beaker tweeting today. Is that something we should keep doing? Some people giving me 100. Oh, somebody's giving me a peace sign. Nobody's telling me to stop. We'll find out. We actually gained a bunch of followers from that, so I think it's been pretty popular. It allows me to say some things that maybe our account wouldn't normally say, which I've like the freedom, because Beaker's a bit of a loose cannon on Twitter. So yeah, there's that.
I have a Beaker question.
You have a Beaker question?
Yeah.
Jennifer.
I live in New York, and I vacation in the Thousand Islands, which is part Canada, part US. And the cormorants have really started to take over the waterways. And I wonder if Beaker would like take a vacation and chase them off for us.
What, a cormorant? What? Is that a bird?
It's a bird. It's a black water bird. And you only used to see them like every once in a while, but now they're just like everywhere. And I feel like I don't see the loons as much anymore.
Oh no. Well, we had to be really careful on the coast because there's these shore birds. They're like these little tiny adorable birds that just zip zap through the water, and we had to have Beaker on a leash or she would just tear after them. and she is so fast. She can run. She can run as fast as birds can fly. So we just don't want her to be a predator of birds, right? But I'm sure. I think you're asking sarcastically, but I think she definitely would go after those birds. She would go after a Canada goose.
I go after the Canada geese. I'll chase them off, but
Yeah.
it was absolutely sarcastic.
Okay. A couple people asked to be a speaker. I brought them up. Susan, that you were first, and then Liz.
Okay. First of all, the cormorants. I actually love cormorants because they're, as birds, they're really dorky and awkward, and that's
cute.
exactly like one of my dogs. If my dog Gibson were a bird, he would be a cormorant. So don't diss the cormorants too bad.
Okay. I've never heard of them before today. So
yes. They're seabirds, but they dive, and when they're trying to land, they kind of crash into, and like I said, they're really dorky and awkward. But the other comment I had was totally not dog or hummingbird related, though I love the hummingbirds. And that is, after your conversation last week, I think it was, I, as an American, made butter tarts.
Oh, you did with after we talked to Brittle Star.
Yes. And oh my gosh, I don't know how I have lived without these for my 50 plus years of life. So
they're just like you said. They're sexing. If you put sex and gold in a blender, you'd get a butter tart.
Absolutely. So for any other Americans or non-Canadians out there who have not tried the butter tarts, do it. Just do it. they're just heaven on the tongue.
I can also say that's
cool.
true. We did a family funeral in Port Hope, Ontario once, and we were all trying to beat everybody else to the bakery the next day to buy out the butter tarts.
That's amazing.
But my grandfather had called ahead, so they made extra, so nobody could actually do that.
Oh. And you're rushing away from a funeral to do this? They must be that.
Well, it was the next day. We buried great grandma, and then the next day,
I'm just teasing.
We all hit the bakery.
Yeah, they are so good. Oh my goodness. They're kind of like Brittle Star or Stuart didn't go into. They're kind of high in calories, so you probably shouldn't eat like 50 of them a week. But they're as a treat once in a while. Chef's kiss.
Yeah,
so good.
We don't need to talk about the calories. They're just
we don't need to talk
amazing.
About that. Liz, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can just keep your Canada geese up in Canada because those things are horrible.
They are horrible. They're the worst.
I was driving the other day, and I was going to tag you in the tweet. There was a car that literally, it was like a service that if you had Canadian geese, they would come and take care of them. I don't know what that means, but that just tells you how horrible these things are. I know I could Google, you always have better explanations. The tweet that Beaker did about the DNA.
Yes.
Is that, how hyperbolic is that? Like, do we have...
Like if you took I fact checked it. If you took your DNA and out, it actually could go. A couple fact checkers checked it out to Pluto and back. Like that's
seriously.
That's how coiled like all of like your entire DNA and all of your body, just like one cell, right? Like the DNA in every cell in your body. That's how much there is. Now it would only be like a molecule wide, but yeah, it would go to Pluto and back. I think actually multiple times.
That's insane. But no, I love the Beaker tweeting. She's hilarious and chaotic, and it's great. So keep it up.
Yeah, we didn't attract anti-vaxxers today, so it's been a good day for me on Twitter. That other tweet that got like 9,000 likes, that was a rough go in my direct message box, I'll tell you. Any other questions for Bunsen and Beaker overtime? We had Dr. Spence on talking about hummingbirds, and now if anybody has any questions or comments about Bunsen or Beaker, you can ask.
Can I ask a real quick question as far as what type of drone you're using to shoot video that I've wanted to get?
Yeah. So I think it's called the Mavic Air 2. And what I like it was not the cheapest drone. Like they're not cheap, these drones, but it shoots 4K on a gimbal. Like you have image stabilization. And I can control it on my phone, and the whole thing packs up into like basically something the size of my wife's purse. So all of this is like super, super impressive, and it takes crazy good video. There's one just down from it called the Mavic Mini. That's about $300 or $400 cheaper Canadian. And I didn't go with it because it didn't have the same kind of stabilization. I threw it up in a windstorm the other day, and it flew no problem. And it was like wind, and the drone was like fighting, but it was still taking stabilized photos and pictures. So it was pretty impressive.
Nice, thank you. And I wanted to comment on one other thing. You were talking about the geese, and I'm not sure if they were actually Canadian geese, but here in Denver there was a problem with the geese last year, and
they're probably
Canadian. But their remedy didn't go over very well. They were herding them in the early morning into nets, and then taking them and processing them as food and giving them to the homeless, which got shut down real quick.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, don't know if that's a good idea. Everybody was like, no, not a good idea. And there was like threatenation, so they put that to bed.
They don't taste
probably
that
not,
good.
well, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Geese in Canada are protected. Like you cannot shoot them. Like they just go. They'll just take over everywhere, and you're just like, well, this is us now. They're back.
That's what happened. They've taken over some nice golf courses and like really nice neighborhoods, and people weren't too happy. But they were relocating them, and then they started to do the processing, and the processing obviously got shut down. So they just tried to relocate them as best they could, but they came back.
Well, that's better. I think that's better for everybody. Yeah. Oh wow. Somebody asked to be a speaker.
Ramona.
I'm sorry, Ramona. I'm sorry, Ramona.
That's okay, Jason. No problem. Just a really fast question. Has Bunsen forgiven you for dumping him in the sea?
I didn't. So he fell out himself. We were kayaking. Yeah, so we were kayaking, and if you listen to the podcast, the stories on the podcast last week, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. So Beaker yeeted herself, like jumped off the side of the paddleboard, swam through the ocean to me. She would be fine just swimming. I think she just wanted to go and be, some kind of like seal. So I scooped her out of the ocean, and then she was the two dogs in the kayak. And it was starting to get really choppy. So we were heading back in, and I did a really powerful stroke just to get in faster. And that jolt just like caused Bunsen to lose his balance. And if you ever seen a dog try to stand up in a moving car, that's what it looked like. And he was like, and then he just like slowly fell over the side. And because Bernese Mountain Dogs are built like a bus, they don't bend. He just like fell out of the boat on his back. Like he did like a somersault onto his back, blobbed with his feet up in the air down once. And then the PFD righted him. So like we always make sure the dogs have PFDs on. And he was mad. And he looked at me, and then he looked at the shore, and he's like, I'm to shore. So he tried to swim to shore, but we were way too far away. So I hauled him back into the kayak, and he was mad at me for the entire day. The next day, he was good. Like, he forgot about it. But the entire day, he wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't acknowledge I existed. Chris had to feed him supper. He wouldn't even, like, look at me with food or anything. He was so mad. So mad.
I could tell on the picture on the beach how mad he was at you. It was hysterical. Anyway, you dumped him in the ocean, bad guy.
Yes, yeah, sort of. It's his own clumsiness, though. That's his fault. He's very graceful when he's climbing mountains, like super graceful, but not so much around the water.
Just wait until he dumps you in a snowdrift.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. Chris had a comment about the cormorants. Cormorants? Cormorants. cormorants, like just sick the hummingbirds on them. I mean, those little hummingbirds can take out a red-tailed fox, which like eats other birds. Any other questions about Bunsen and Beaker before we shut down the space for overtime? If not, that's okay. Oh, the space was doing something weird. Can you guys hear me? Maybe I was lost. I don't know.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe. Okay. So if there's no more, Susan, you have a question?
I was just saying that I could hear you. Although,
okay.
Although with the cormorants, it is it's kind of a climate change issue also, because I don't know, 10 years ago, I'm in northern Illinois, and you never saw them this far north. And just like with the hummingbirds and other birds, they're finding their space farther and farther north with climate change. So
that's the thing. When climate change, like scientists that like are basically they're astrophysicists that study Earth, and I've talked to a few of them. Like Dr. Catherine Hayhoe was on the podcast. You can check her out. She's like one of the world's leading climate scientists. She's like, if you're not going to believe all of the data about climate change, just talk to ecologists. They'll tell you that the animals are moving north. So that's one case from your area, Susan.
Yeah,
hey?
Absolutely. And birds are great. It's the canary in the coal mine. I mean, birds are just great. Sort of, they show that ahead of everybody else. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's cool. That's a great comment. It's a little depressing, but I mean, it's interesting that you have that direct thing from your area of the world. Okay. If there's no more questions, I think we'll shut down the spaces. Next week in Spaces Unleashed, we have a really special guest. Her name is Shar, and she is the owner and lead trainer at Waggles, which is Red Deer's dog training facility. Like it's the premier one in Red Deer. I'm not premier, but it's really good. And Bunsen and Beaker have been trained by her and her team. So we're going to have her on the podcast. We're going to have her in Spaces next week on Tuesday. So she doesn't have Twitter, so I'm still working out how we technology this. I think I have an idea. She's going to call into Zoom, and then I'll just have it on speaker, and that will work. So there won't be a little icon for Shar because she does not have Twitter. I told her to make Twitter. I mean, Waggles is amazing. They're on Facebook. You can check them out on on Facebook. Okay. Austin, I don't know if Austin has his tip jar set up. If he doesn't, that's okay.
I'm good, but thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. We always say at the end of Spaces, if the guest or myself, if you feel this was a good use of your time and you'd like to send a few dollars our way, we would appreciate that. And if not, that's okay. I'm glad everybody was here learning about hummingbirds. And we'll see you guys all next week. Please send us some messages about folks you'd like to hear in Spaces or questions that didn't get answered. And we'll see you all next week.